We've covered that extensively as well. I want to talk about presidential politics for a few minutes here because, we have the debate, of course, coming up here, NewsNation, next week in Alabama. It's interesting what's happening with Nikki Haley. We've done a segment, it seems, on this show just about every day for the last week or two about this Haley momentum. So we had a reporter up in New Hampshire yesterday. I had a chance to talk to some voters. I want to play a little bit of what they said and then use that to have a conversation about whether this momentum is real in terms of a choice in the GOP primary. Here's some of the voters from yesterday up in New Hampshire.
If it comes to Trump versus Biden, who do you think you vote for?
Biden. If it comes down to Nikki Haley against Biden, I may lean towards Nikki Haley.
My wife is just listening. I'm tending to be more of a supporter. Her position on abortion was, to me, seemed quite fair.
She's pro-democracy, pro the system, pro-constitution. Trump is pro-Trump, period. End of story.
That could be a New Hampshire point of view, which is not every state, but it is an early state and an important one. But your thoughts on the Haley momentum and whether it's real?
Well, she's obviously working hard for it. She got the Koch brothers to come out and support her, and even Jamie Dimon, a liberal Democrat, to say that Democrats need to give Republicans this option. I don't think that that's going to help her necessarily, but I just don't necessarily buy the Haley momentum, because as you're listening to these voters, what do they like about her? They like that she has no position on abortion. Okay, fine, but that's not something you're going to do. That's something you're not going to do. And then they like that she's pro-democracy. I genuinely do not know what that means. Like, she's not personally going to storm the Capitol. Okay, fine. But I think that it's
probably, I'm sure it's an allusion to some. I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but I was going to say, well, that is actually a simpler way of putting it, probably, that it's just simply not Trump, or that, she believes that Biden won the last election, which I believe, that kind of thing. There will be people who vote that way. There are people in the Republican Party, I think, still who think that way, that are looking for someone, no?
I think they are, but I think that there's more Republicans who saw Mitt Romney fail, who saw John McCain fail, and they don't want somebody who's a Republican in name only. They want somebody with a platform who says what they're going to do. And I think that's why Ron DeSantis tonight, in having his debate with Governor Newsom, has such an opportunity to show his policies. And that, I think, speaks more to the average Republican voter.
That is kind of interesting. I was wondering, there's a debate on another TV channel tonight that May talks about, Chris. I was wondering whether Haley should have been the one in there because she's the alternative now to Trump, but it's DeSantis who people aren't talking about as much. Is it an opportunity for him, or, have people moved on? I wonder. Chris, what do you think?
I think they've moved on from him because the man has spent $100 million and his numbers have been cut in half. I think his run at the presidency, at least for now, is over. I think Nikki Haley is the best candidate they could put forward. I do think that she'd be big trouble for Joe Biden in 2024 if Nikki Haley was on the ballot.
You said that a few times. You don't like it as a Democrat.
Sure.
You don't like the matchup.
No, I don't like the matchup. But the one thing I do like is that, whoever wins on election night, I'm going to go to bed and I'm not going to worry about democracy falling apart if Nikki Haley's the candidate, which is why she's so dangerous to Joe Biden, because most people don't find her crazy. Ron DeSantis is hard to like. I think he's not going to do well with Governor Newsom tonight over on our old network. But I think that they will put their spin on it, and Governor Newsom will put his spin on it, and they'll all say they won. And there's how it goes. But I do think this. I think Nikki Haley is going to overperform in New Hampshire. And once you can show that Trump can be beat, all bets are off whether or not he wins the nomination. She's got to win either New Hampshire or Iowa, or at least be very, very close in both of those states. And then we'll see what happens. Because once Trump's era of invincibility in the Republican Party primary is over, I don't know where he goes from there.
I'll let you have the last word on this topic before we move on. Is Chris barking up the wrong tree there? You still think Trump is pretty much invincible in the primaries, at least?
Well, I do think Chris is right in that shaving off some of that invincibility really is the goal. Some of the problem, though, is that Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis have spent, for good reason, so much time going after each other that it's hard to focus on Trump. I think Nikki Haley's new ad moral clarity really does start to go after Trump. And that's what all the candidates should have been doing a long time ago.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.